Anybody got any questions before we hand over to Annie to talk about the Coran? So as I've said earlier, I mean, it was a whistle-stop tour of the research that we've undertaken. We're interested in getting people's views about how the sector's being included in the integrated care system makeup. So if you want a copy of the report, contact us via Epic Inquiries email, or put your details in the chat either on Feedloop or on Zoom, and we'll send a copy out by email to you. Right now, can I introduce you to my colleague Annabelle Edwards, who's going to talk about the Community Research and Engagement Network. Thanks, Annie.
Brilliant. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can we all see that? I'm going to hope for the best.
Yes.
If you're not muted, can I ask that you mute, because I am getting some feedback? Okay, brilliant. So as Paula said, I'm going to talk to you about the Coran. So that's the Community Research and Engagement Network, and you'll hear Coran said many times. I'm sure you've all heard it hundreds of times already throughout your journey through ARC and Clark. And what the Coran is really about is building relationships between ARC staff, and researchers, academics, others, and organizations who are delivering in our communities. So these are organizations that might be, charitable. So we're talking about the VCFSE from the previous presentation, really. So charitable organizations, faith organizations, social enterprises, housing associations, organizations that might be referred to as the third sector as well. So when we talk about voluntary community, faith and social enterprise, VCFSE, we're also talking about third sector. It's a really confusing landscape, and there's no easy acronym, unfortunately. So I'll probably say a mixture of many different descriptions here, as Emma said in her presentation. And what the Coran's about is about building these relationships. And whilst we really like making friends, especially me after a year of a pandemic, I don't know about everybody else, but I am in need of friends. The desire to build these relationships with organizations working in communities is actually underpinned by a much deeper rationale. And that's that we believe really strongly that if we can build these strong relationships, that we can better share our knowledge and expertise, and that's knowledge coming from the organizations and from researchers in the ARC. And we can also produce better health and social care research, and in turn address health inequalities. So there's a really deep rationale for this. And I'll explore a bit about why we believe that and what acting upon it might look like a bit later. But firstly, I'm going to take you through a bit of a historical jaunt. So if you know the history of ARCs, you'll likely be aware that before ARCs, there were Clarks. And within the Clark, confusingly, there was also a Coran, or rather Corans. And if you've heard of the Coran before in the context of the Clark, it's likely that that was in the context of the Neighbourhood Resilience Programme. That was a really, really innovative and expansive piece of work that is very well regarded by everybody, but certainly everybody I have spoken to in the Clark ARC landscape. And within the Neighbourhood Resilience Programme, some of you will be aware that we had 10 neighbourhoods for learning. And those neighbourhoods for learning were areas across the Northwest Coast patch, within which local communities and key stakeholders in the area were supported to explore issues affecting the resilience of those communities.
Annie, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Can you please change to presentation view? There's some comments on feedback.
Okay.
That the slides are difficult to see.
Sorry, yeah, I'll do that now. Thanks for flagging. Luckily, I've got very little on the slides, so it shouldn't have affected you too much. So in those neighbourhoods for learning, we brought together lots of different people, including residents, to explore these issues affecting resilience. And within these communities, they're encouraged to sort of undertake activities to explore particularly interesting issues. So that included resident-led research inquiries like the one into air quality that Fiona was talking about earlier, and also produce some really useful resources for local communities out of this work. And the Coran in this context was all these different people who came together to undertake that research or work, whatever in particular the area looked at. In the context of the ARC, the Corin is somewhat different. Hang on, okay, but don't be too sad. So in my role, I get followed around by the ghost of Corin's past, and it was a bit difficult at first because everybody loved it so much and everybody loved neighbourhood resilience so much. So it does make it a bit difficult to be coming here and saying, sorry, it's gone. But all good things must come to an end, and out of the ashes of Corin 1, or out of the phoenix of Corin 1 comes Corin 2. And what's different? Well, they're different for many reasons, which we'll explore throughout the presentation, but the sort of underpinning difference is the sort of purpose that drives the two. So whilst in Corin 1, we're really conscious to elevate the voices of residents within communities in the research context, to say that these voices matter, that they're relevant to research, that they're really important, and that they add something that nobody else has. That was Corin 1. Corin 2 is about building these relationships between researchers and the community third sector. And that's not because we don't value the voices anymore, it's just there's work to do over here as well. And so that's what we're going to do. And hopefully, we certainly believe that if we can improve our relationships with community and third sector organisations, then in the longer term, we can also elevate community voices, because those organisations are working with the communities very intimately in a way that researchers simply can't, I would say. And so where does this come from? Well, in EPIC, as I hope you'll have learnt through this rush jaunt of EPIC history, we work really, really closely with community sector organisations. That is what the team theme is about, and it has been since the days of the Clark. And what's really become apparent through the work of EPIC is that there's scope to deepen the relationships with third sector organisations and to broaden the opportunities for engagement. And by that I mean building a mutually beneficial, symbiotic, growing, co-developing relationship with organisations, and to move away from a tendency amongst researchers to only go to the third sector when they need something. And that, you know, at least they're going there, you could say, but they tend to only go there because they need information about a community or they need help accessing the community. And we don't really like that in EPIC. And we're hoping that through the Corin, we can help to move ourselves away from that a little bit, and also to move the wider ARC away from that. And there's 10 imaginary ARCFEST points for whoever can tell me what symbiotic relationship Nemo is in. Okay, so who's involved in the Corin? In the first instance, we have a coordination group, and that's currently evolving. So at the moment, it's me and third sector representatives who we've been working with for a really, really long time. So from the days of the Neighbourhood Resilience Programme. So the good Corin, the old Corin, the angel Corin has not gone. It still lives in our coordination group. And in addition to those third sector representatives who have a really good knowledge of the sector across the patch, we're also recruiting public advisors. The deadline for that's tomorrow. So hook me up, give me a call today, apply tomorrow, and you could be one of these lucky meerkats. And we're also recruiting recruiting is a stretch, but we're after an academic lead who can help navigate what we can do academically in the research context to help build these relationships. So what's the Corin doing? It's a big question. It's a question I've been playing with since I started this job in January, alongside what is the Corin? What we're definitely doing, and what's going to be happening continuously, what's already happening, is the sharing of information. And the value of this can't be understated. And it's something that, if you know Paula very, very well, she does all the time on a daily basis. And the Corin is partly about formalizing that in a lovely, informal way, but about taking it away from Paula and giving it an actual status. So that's the sharing of opportunities for funding, for opportunities to become involved in research projects, and sharing those to the wider CORIN networks that extends beyond our coordination group. Sharing opportunities to get a position on a board. When we hear, you hear. That's the point of the CORIN. And it's not just telling you that it's happening, it's also supporting applications for those things. So we recently supported a colleague from a third sector organisation to apply to sit on a committee. And that's something that we hope we can do, coordinate through the CORIN and take some of that work in EPIC ourselves. Also opportunities to attend events, workshops, seminars, insight into communities. We're going to be sharing that with people within our networks, academics and community sector organisations. And again, if we know, you know, that's the point of the CORIN. More broadly, there is, maybe not more broadly, I'm not sure what it is, but we have an underpinning aim to encourage engaged research. And by that we mean researchers should be considering the VCFSE sector, the third sector, on day 1.1. Who can we contact in the VCFSE sector? Day 1. And that's really important to us because we believe that not only can the sector add value to research, but also that the sector may gain from that, and they may want to gain from the opportunity to be involved in research. And also that if you involve the sector, not only do you get better research, it's potentially more equitable because you'll be considering as a researcher what funding is needed for the sector to participate in this research. Instead of going to them after you've got your funding saying, you're the voluntary sector, you can do it free. They can't, they have huge capacity issues. So you're being more equitable in your research process if you do this. And in short, you'll have much more relevant outputs because if you've considered the sector and you're fully engaged, you're listening to them on day 1, then you'll be doing research that is very relevant and that can be implemented if appropriate, right? If you just give some academic research to somebody, likely isn't that useful. So this is about co-producing research in a real sense, like we do public advisors, but taking that to the voluntary sector. So we're getting the CORIN going over the next, I sort of lose sight of my months, but between now and September is our initial phase. So myself and the coordination group that hopefully will be fully formed in the next few weeks, we're going to be coming up with a programme of work, both for the next 6 months and also for the next phase of the ARC. So we currently have planned some knowledge exchange events. So that's where our third sector representatives who've been with us for such a long time and who are such experts in their fields are going to be telling researchers across the ARC who they are, what they do, what they know about their communities and how they've been involved in research in the past. And we think that's really valuable because whilst we in EPIC might know a lot about the third sector, not everyone does, and some people might think they know more than they do. So it's really important for us to go back to basics, build the blocks and say, this is the sector, let's think about how we can work with them. And in the future, we're thinking about hosting, a range of events, but this is to be developed with myself and the coordination group over the next few months. One of the things we're talking about is a sort of a regular meeting place where researchers can bring ideas to the CORIN. So we'll say, take it to the CORIN. And as the coordination group, we will assemble a group to come to that meeting and talk about the issue, talk about the research project. A group of really relevant organisations and people who can help take that research forward. Now in ARC, everyone seems to have a research group, but perhaps it's formed 6 months down the line or 12 months down the line when something's funded. And this is about saying, do it when you just have a blink of an idea. And in addition to academics being able to present in these forums, we're also really interested in hearing community-derived insight there. So like our knowledge exchange events, but perhaps more specific about particular issues, particular insight that a community organisation might have. And then inviting ARC staff and others to come and hear that and to value that like they do going to a seminar, like they do going to ARCFEST. Another thing that's sort of been talked about briefly, but we really need to flesh out is the potential for the Corin to coordinate a programme of smaller pieces of research. So if a voluntary sector organisation, for instance, wants to conduct a piece of research, but they don't have the capacity, and I mean sort of time more than anything, and funding to do that, then potentially we could connect them to somebody at the university, maybe a student who needs a project. And we could build that relationship and help fulfill that research need. Another opportunity, possibility is sharing knowledge about research. So looking at the third sector, speaking to the third sector through our representatives and finding out what can we as an ARC and myself as a Lancaster University employee provide to the third sector, because we have resources, we have things that we could share. So there's going to be a conversation about how best we can do that. I feel like I've spoken very, very quickly. Sorry about that. But I think that's me done. So it would be really, really good for you in the breakout rooms to have a think about what the Corin means for you. And I think Paula might tie that up more neatly than me.
I'm just really conscious of the time and we're stopping people getting lunch, but I do, so we won't be going into breakout rooms, which you might all be a big sigh of relief. I just wondered whether people had some general comments about what they'd heard. Obviously, for a number of the participants, you'll have heard about Corin. So although we're sad that Corin 1 has gone, as Annie says, emerging from the ashes is Corin 2. And I think for those people, certainly who were involved in the Neighbourhood Resilience Programme, it was a really good focal point to glean intelligence, insight from communities and about work that was already being undertaken. So any comments from people about what they've heard? I can also just say actually that Annabelle's QR code does work because I've just tried it. So if people want to be part of our growing network for communications and be part of Annie's aspirations with our third sector colleagues about the Corin in the ARC, then please let us know. If you want to click on the QR code with your phone, then it takes you to a form where we can get your details and put you on the mailing list. Any comments from anybody? Everybody wants their lunch, I think. Joanna, sorry.
I also want my lunch.
Yeah. Joanna, anything from Feedloop?
No, nothing from Feedloop at the moment.
Right, well, great, then I won't keep people here any longer than they're required. If anybody's got any queries post-session, as I've said initially, please just get in contact with us via Epic Inquiries or by directly contacting any of the researchers in Epic, and we'll respond and have a catch up with you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the session, everyone. Thanks for your participation, and all go and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.